Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UEC Titan and watched the stars drift past the main viewing screen. His ship was the biggest and most powerful vessel that Earth had ever built. The Titan stretched over 2 kilometers from front to back and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. But Jake knew that size and power meant nothing in this part of space. Out here, the rules were different. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Navigator Lisa Brooks checked their course to Harmony Point for the 3rd time in an hour. She was nervous, and Jake could not blame her. This was their first real mission beyond Earth's solar system. Everything they did today would shape how the galaxy saw humanity for years to come. Chief Engineer Pete Campbell called up from the engine room. His voice crackled through the communication system. "Captain, all systems are running smooth. The new reactor is putting out more power than we know what to do with. These alien ships won't know what hit them." Jake smiled but felt worried at the same time. Pete was a good engineer, but he did not understand what they were walking into. The alien species they were about to meet had been fighting wars in space for thousands of years. They had rules and traditions that went back longer than human civilization. Earth was the new kid trying to join a very old and very exclusive club. "How long until we reach the station?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her instruments again. 2 hours, sir. The Saurid fleet is already there waiting for us." The Saurids were reptile-like aliens who controlled a large part of this sector. They looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs and wore fancy military uniforms. Their leader, Admiral Kethfar, had personally invited humanity to prove themselves in what he called a demonstration of martial prowess. Jake knew it was really a test to see if humans deserved respect or if they would be treated like children. Weapons. Officer Amy Sullivan turned from her console. She was young, but had graduated top of her class from the Naval Academy. "Captain, I've been studying the combat records from the other species. Their battles are weird. They follow all these rules about how far apart ships have to be, what weapons they can use, and when they're allowed to surrender. It's like they're dancing instead of fighting." Jake nodded. He had read the same reports. Every species in the Galactic Consortium followed something called the Sacred Protocols of Combat. These were ancient laws that said how space battles had to be fought. Ships started exactly 1,000 kilometers apart. They could only fire their main weapons in turn. The battle ended when one ship's shields dropped below 20%. No one was supposed to die, and the losing captain had to give a formal speech about how honorably they had been defeated. It all seemed very civilized and very stupid to Jake. In the human wars on Earth, the only rule that mattered was winning. Soldiers used every trick, every advantage, and every dirty tactic they could think of. The enemy did not care about honor when they were shooting at you. "Amy, what do you think of their protocols?" Jake asked. Amy frowned. "Honestly, sir, they seem designed to make sure nobody really wins or loses. It's like they're more worried about looking good than actually fighting. Our weapon systems can do things their computers probably can't even imagine." Pete's voice came through the speakers again. "Captain, that's what I've been trying to tell you. This ship was built for real war, not some fancy game. We've got rapid-fire plasma cannons that can target 6 different ships at once. We've got missile systems that can reload and fire again in under 10 seconds. The aliens take turns shooting at each other like they're playing chess." Jake understood his crew's frustration. The Titan had been designed by military engineers who assumed they would be fighting for their lives against unknown aliens. Every system on the ship was built to kill the enemy as quickly and efficiently as possible. The idea of following polite rules during combat seemed insane to anyone who had studied human military history. The door to the bridge slid open, and Dr. Helen Martinez walked in. She was the ship's cultural advisor and one of the few people on Earth who had spent time studying alien societies. "Captain, I wanted to brief you one more time before we arrive at the station." Jake gestured for her to continue. Helen was smart and had good instincts about alien politics. "The Saurids are testing us," she said, "but not in the way you might think. They don't really care if we win or lose the combat trial. They want to see if we'll follow their rules. Every species that has joined the consortium has had to prove that they understand civilized warfare. The Saurids think we're barbarians who need to be taught proper manners." Lisa looked up from her navigation console. "What happens if we don't follow their rules?" Helen's expression grew serious. "That's never happened before. Every species in the galaxy has accepted the sacred protocols without question. If we break the rules, we'll be the first. I honestly don't know what they would do." Jake stared out at the stars and thought about Earth. 3 billion people were counting on him to make a good impression on behalf of humanity. The consortium controlled trade routes, technology, and resources that Earth desperately needed. If this mission failed, humanity might be stuck in their own solar system for decades. But Jake also thought about human history. Every time humans had been forced to follow someone else's rules, they had eventually found a way to change those rules. The American colonists had not accepted British law forever. The Allies in World War II had not worried about fighting fair against the Nazis. When survival was at stake, humans did whatever it took to win. "Amy," Jake said, "run a full diagnostic on all weapon systems. I want to know exactly what this ship can do." Amy's fingers flew over her controls. "All systems green, Captain. Plasma cannons charged and ready. Missile tubes loaded. Point defense systems online. Shield generators at maximum capacity. We are ready for anything?" Pete's voice came through the speakers with obvious pride. "Captain, this ship is a masterpiece of human engineering. We've got backup systems for our backup systems. The aliens won't believe what they're seeing." Jake hoped Pete was right, but he also worried about what the aliens would think when they saw human technology in action. The Titan was not built for ritual combat. It was built for war. The communication system beeped, and Lisa announced, "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Harmony Point. Admiral Kethfer wants to speak with you." Jake straightened his uniform and walked to the main screen. The image of a 7-foot-tall reptilian alien appeared. Admiral Kethfer wore a uniform covered in medals and decorations that probably represented centuries of honorable service. His yellow eyes looked at Jake with what seemed like amusement. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral said in accented but clear English, "welcome to Harmony Point. I trust your journey was pleasant." "Yes, Admiral. Thank you for the invitation." Kethfer smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "I am eager to see how well humans understand the art of civilized warfare. Your species is young, but perhaps you can learn proper conduct with the right guidance. Report to Docking Bay 7 when you arrive. We have much to discuss." The transmission ended, and Jake stared at the blank screen. The Admiral's tone had been polite, but the message was clear. Humanity was being treated like a student who needed to learn lessons from their betters. Dr. Martinez shook her head. "He's already decided that we're inferior. This whole thing is designed to put us in our place." Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. Maybe it's time someone taught the galaxy that humans don't like being put in their place. The stars ahead grew brighter as Harmony Point came into view. The meeting room on Harmony Point was bigger than any space Jake had ever seen. The ceiling stretched up so high that he could barely see the top. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in curved rows of seats that surrounded a central platform. All of them were watching him with curious eyes. Admiral Kethfar stood at the center of the platform. His reptilian features looked even more intimidating under the bright lights. Next to him stood Captain Zethaner, a smaller Saurid, who would be commanding the ship that would fight against the Titan. Both aliens wore their military uniforms with obvious pride. Captain Morrison, Admiral Kethfor began, his voice echoing through the massive room. Today you will demonstrate that humanity understands the proper way to conduct warfare among civilized species. The sacred protocols have kept peace in this galaxy for over 3,000 years. Every species that joins our consortium must prove they can follow these ancient laws. Jake looked around at the assembled aliens. Some looked like giant insects with multiple arms and glowing eyes. Others were covered in fur or scales, or seemed to be made of living crystal. All of them were watching him with the same expression. They expected him to fail. The rules are simple, Admiral Kethfor continued. Your ship and the Blade of Honor will begin exactly 1,000 kilometers apart. You will advance at the prescribed speed of no more than 50 kilometers per hour. When you reach optimal firing range, you may engage with primary weapons only. The battle ends when one ship's shields drop below 20%. The losing captain will then offer formal surrender and praise the victor's skill and honor. Captain Zethaner stepped forward. He was younger than the admiral, but moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Captain Morrison, I have studied the technical specifications of your vessel. Your ship is larger than ours, but size means nothing without proper training. I will be honored to teach you the first lessons of civilized combat. Jake felt his jaw tighten. These aliens talked about fighting like it was some kind of art class. We're ready to begin whenever you are, Captain. The Admiral smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Excellent. The combat trial will take place in the Valorous sector. Representatives from the consortium will observe from a safe distance. Remember, Captain Morrison, this is not about winning or losing. This is about proving that humans can conduct themselves with honor. 2 hours later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Titan as they moved into position in the Valorous sector. The space around them was filled with alien ships of every size and shape. News of humanity's first combat trial had spread quickly, and it seemed like half the galaxy had come to watch. Lisa Brooks checked her navigation instruments. Captain, we're at the starting position. The Blade of Honor is exactly 1,000 kilometers away, just like the rules require. Jake looked at the main screen. The Saurid ship was sleek and elegant, with smooth curves and polished metal that reflected the light from nearby stars. It looked more like a work of art than a weapon of war. The Titan, by comparison, was all angles and armor plating. It looked exactly like what it was built to be. Amy Sullivan ran her fingers over the weapon's controls. Captain, I'm reading there. Ship's specifications. They've got standard plasma cannons and basic shield generators. Nothing we can't handle. But sir, our weapons are way too powerful for this kind of fight. It's like bringing a machine gun to a knife fight. Pete Campbell's voice came through the speakers from the engine room. Captain, I'm throttling back the reactor to minimum power. Even so, we're generating 3 times more energy than their ship. These aliens have no idea what modern human technology can do. Dr. Helen Martinez stood near the back of the bridge, watching everything with worried eyes. Captain, remember what I told you. They're not really testing our fighting ability. They want to see if we'll be good little students who follow their rules. Jake nodded, but kept his attention on the enemy ship. Something felt wrong about this whole situation. The Saurids were being too confident, too relaxed. Admiral Kethfor had acted like the outcome was already decided. All ships, this is Admiral Kethfor, came the voice over the communication system. The combat trial will now begin. Both vessels may advance at the prescribed speed. Remember, this is a demonstration of honor and skill, not a battle to the death. Lisa engaged the engines, and the Titan began moving forward at exactly 50 kilometers per hour. The Blade of Honor moved toward them at the same speed. Jake watched the distance counter tick down slowly. At this rate, it would take nearly 10 minutes to reach firing range. "This is the stupidest way to fight I've ever seen," Amy muttered. "We're crawling toward each other like we're in a parade." Jake had to agree. In every human military doctrine, he had studied, speed and surprise were the keys to victory. Moving slowly toward an enemy just gave them more time to prepare and aim. But these were the rules, and humanity needed to make a good impression. The minutes passed slowly. Jake could see the alien observers repositioning their ships to get better views of the coming battle. Some of them were broadcasting live feeds to their home worlds. Billions of beings across the galaxy would be watching humanity's first test. "Entering optimal firing range in 30 seconds, Lisa announced. Jake took a deep breath. "Amy, prepare. To fire primary weapons only. Follow their protocols exactly." "Yes, sir. Plasma cannons charged and ready." The distance counter reached the magic number, and both ships stopped advancing. For a moment, everything was perfectly still. Then the Blade of Honor fired first, sending a bright beam of energy toward the Titan. The shot hit their forward shields, and Amy reported, "Minor shield damage, sir. About 2% power loss." Jake nodded. "Return fire. Single shot primary. Weapons only." The Titan's main plasma cannon fired once. The beam was much brighter and more powerful than anything the Saurid ship had used. It struck the Blade of Honor's shields and caused them to flicker for a moment. "Their shields dropped 4%, Amy reported. "Sir, we could end this fight right now if we used our full firepower." But Jake followed the rules. For the next 20 minutes, both ships exchanged careful, measured shots. The Saurid captain fought exactly like he had been trained, following patterns that were probably thousands of years old. Each shot was precise and calculated. Each movement was textbook perfect. Jake began to realize what was happening. Captain Zethaner was not trying to win quickly. He was drawing out the fight to show off human weaknesses. Every time the Titan fired, the alien ship moved in ways that made the human weapons look clumsy and inaccurate. Every time the Saurids fired back, their shots hit exactly where they were aimed. The watching aliens began to murmur among themselves. Jake could not understand their languages, but their tone was clear. They were not impressed with humanity's performance. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "our shields are down to 40%. They're making us look like amateurs." Amy's voice was tight with frustration. "Sir, they're playing with us. That ship could have finished us off 10 minutes ago, but they're keeping the fight going to embarrass us in front of everyone." Jake felt anger building in his chest. The Saurids were not testing humanity's fighting ability. They were putting on a show to prove that humans were weak and clumsy. Every species in the galaxy was watching humanity get humiliated by an enemy who was not even trying their best. Pete's voice crackled through the speakers. "Captain, our shields are failing, but our weapons are barely being used. This ship has 10 times more firepower than we've fired so far. We're fighting with one hand tied behind our back." Dr. Martinez moved closer to Jake's command chair. "Captain, you have a choice to make. We can surrender now and accept our place as a junior member of the consortium, or we can do something that will change everything." Jake looked at the main screen. The Blade of Honor was moving in another perfect attack pattern, preparing to deliver another carefully aimed shot that would drop their shields a few more points. Captain Zethaner was probably already preparing his victory speech about how he had schooled the primitive humans in proper combat techniques. The alien observers were enjoying the show. Some of them were clearly placing bets on how long it would take for the humans to surrender. Others looked bored, as if the outcome had never been in doubt. Shields down to 32%, Amy reported. One more hit like that and we'll be in surrender range. Jake thought about Earth. He thought about the 3 billion people who were counting on him to bring humanity into the galactic community with dignity and respect. He thought about all the human soldiers throughout history who had faced impossible odds and found ways to win anyway. Amy, Jake said quietly, what would happen if we stopped following their rules? Amy's eyes lit up with understanding. Sir, we could end this fight in under a minute, but it would mean breaking every protocol they have. Captain, Dr. Martinez warned, if we break the sacred protocols, there's no going back. The entire galaxy will see us as dangerous criminals. Jake watched the sword ship line up for another attack. In a few seconds, they would fire again, and humanity would be forced to surrender in front of billions of watching aliens. Earth would be marked as a weak species that could only survive by following other people's rules. Amy Sullivan's fingers flew across her weapons console. For the first time since the battle began, she was not holding back. Every system that had been locked down by the sacred protocols came online at once. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as the Titan's true power awakened. All weapons armed and ready, Captain, Amy said, her voice filled with excitement. Plasma cannons, missile tubes, point defense systems, everything. What are your orders? Jake stared at the sword ship on the main screen. Captain Zethiner was probably preparing another careful, measured attack that would drop their shields by exactly the right amount. He had no idea what was about to hit him. Maximum speed toward the target, Jake ordered. All weapons, continuous fire. Show them what human warships are really built for. Lisa Brooks slammed her hand down on the engine controls. The Titan's massive reactors roared to life, pushing the ship forward at 10 times the speed they had been moving before. A sudden acceleration threw everyone against their seats, but the crew held on and kept working. The change was instant and shocking. One moment the Titan had been crawling forward like a sleepy giant. The next moment it was streaking through space like a missile, closing the distance to the enemy ship in seconds instead of minutes. Captain Zethiner's voice crackled over the communication system, full of panic and confusion. Human vessel, you are violating the sacred protocols. Return to prescribed speed immediately or face consequences. Jake grabbed the communication controls. The time for protocols is over, Captain. Let me show you how humans really fight. The Titan's plasma cannons opened fire, not with single careful shots, but with a continuous stream of energy that lit up space like a miniature sun. The beams hit the blade of Honor's shields and did not stop. More weapons joined the attack. Missile tubes launched their payloads in rapid succession. Point defense guns added their firepower to the barrage. The sword ship's shields flashed and sparked under the assault. In 10 seconds, they dropped from full power to 50%. In 20 seconds, they were down to 20%. In 30 seconds, they failed completely. The watching alien ships erupted in chaos. Voices in dozens of different languages filled the communication channels, all of them shouting in shock and disbelief. No one had ever seen anything like this before. Impossible. Admiral Kethfor's voice cut through the noise. No ship can generate that much firepower. Their weapons should have overheated and shut down by now. Pete Campbell's laughter echoed from the engine room. Admiral, you have no idea what human engineering can do. Our weapons have cooling systems and backup power that your people never dreamed of. We can keep this up all day. The Blade of Honor was trying to retreat, but the Titan was faster. Lisa kept them close, matching every move the sword ship made. The enemy could not escape, could not hide, and could not fight back effectively against weapons that fired 20 times faster than anything they had ever faced. Captain Zethiner, Jake called over the communication system. "I believe your shields are below 20%. According to your own rules, you should surrender now." There was silence from the Saurid ship. Captain Zethan had probably never been in a situation where he was the one being asked to surrender. His entire career had been built on following ancient patterns of combat that always worked the same way. Amy looked up from her weapons console. "Captain, I'm reading 6 more ships moving to surround us. Looks like they're not happy about our new approach to combat." Jake checked his tactical display. Ships from 3 different alien species were closing in on the Titan. Their weapons were powering up, and their shields were at full strength. What had started as a demonstration was turning into a real battle. Dr. Martinez moved to Jake's side, her face pale with worry. "Captain, this is exactly what I was afraid of. We've broken their most sacred laws. They're going to try to stop us by force." "Let them try," Jake said, his voice hard as steel. "Amy, expand targeting to include all hostile vessels. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." The communication system erupted with angry voices. Admiral Kethfor was shouting orders in his own language, while representatives from other species demanded that the humans surrender immediately. Some of them were calling for the Titan to be destroyed as an example to other species who might think about breaking the sacred protocols. "Human vessel," came a new voice, speaking with the cold authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This is Fleet Commander Drake H. of the Consortium Peace Force. You have violated sacred laws that have kept this galaxy stable for thousands of years. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will use force to stop you." Jake looked at his crew. Lisa was ready at the navigation controls, her hands steady despite the danger. Amy was tracking 6 different targets on her weapons display, calculating firing solutions for all of them at once. Pete was running the reactor at maximum output, giving them more power than any single ship should be able to handle. These were human military officers, trained to think and fight and adapt in ways that the galaxy had never seen before. They were not going to back down now. "Fleet Commander," Jake replied, "we came here in peace, hoping to join your consortium as equals. Instead, you tried to humiliate us in front of the entire galaxy. If you want to fight, then fight. But don't expect us to make it easy for you." The first shot came from a ship that looked like a giant metal flower with glowing petals. The energy beam struck the Titan's shields and barely made them flicker. Human shield technology was designed to stop much more powerful attacks than anything these aliens could produce. Amy did not wait for orders. Her return shot punched through the alien ship's shields like they were made of paper and took out their main weapon system in a single hit. The beautiful flower ship began spinning helplessly, its petals dark and powerless. "One down, 5-2. Go," Amy reported calmly. The other alien ships attacked together, filling space with energy beams and primitive missiles. The Titan's point defense systems came online, shooting down incoming missiles before they could hit. The energy beams struck their shields and did minimal damage. Jake realized that the aliens had become so used to fighting by rules that their weapons and defenses had not improved in centuries. They were still using technology that was designed for the careful, measured combat of the sacred protocols. Against an enemy that fought to win, they were almost helpless. The Titan moved through the enemy formation like a shark among minnows. Lisa piloted the ship with skill that amazed even Jake, dodging attacks that came too slowly and positioning them for perfect shots that Amy never missed. Every few seconds, another alien ship lost its weapons or shields or engines. "This is not combat." Admiral Kethfor's voice was filled with horror and disbelief. "This is savagery. This is chaos. You are destroying everything that makes us civilized. Jake grabbed the communication controls again. Admiral, we're not destroying civilization. We're showing you what happens when you try to keep warriors in cages built out of tradition and ceremony. You wanted to test us, so here's your test. We're one ship against your entire fleet, and we're winning. The battle was turning into a rout. 3 alien ships were dead in space, their systems disabled by precisely aimed human weapons. 2 more were retreating as fast as their engines could carry them. Only Admiral Kethver's flagship was still fighting, and even it was taking heavy damage. Pete's voice came through the speakers, full of professional pride. Captain, all systems are still running perfectly. We've used less than 30% of our ammunition, and the reactor is barely warming up. We could fight like this for hours. The alien observers who had come to watch humanity's humiliation were now fleeing in terror. Ships that had been positioned to get the best view of the combat trial were racing toward the edges of the system, desperate to escape before the insane. Humans turned their attention to them. Dr. Martinez watched the tactical display with a mixture of awe and fear. Captain, we've done something that can never be undone. Every species in the galaxy now knows that the sacred protocols can be broken. Some of them will try to adapt and learn from what we've done. Others will see us as a threat that has to be destroyed. Jake nodded grimly. Then we'd better make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. Admiral Kethver's flagship was barely holding together. Its shields were gone, half its weapons were destroyed, and it was leaking atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. But the Admiral himself was still on the communication channel, his voice shaking with rage and something that might have been fear. You have doomed this galaxy, he said. The sacred protocols were not just rules of combat. They were the foundation of our peace. Without them, we will return to the chaos and bloodshed of the ancient wars. Millions will die because of what you have done today. Jake looked out at the stars and thought about Earth, about humanity, about all the species that might be watching this battle and learning from it. Admiral, he said quietly, maybe it's time this galaxy learned that there are worse things than war, like being so afraid of fighting that you forget how to defend what matters. The communication channel went silent. Around them, space was filled with disabled alien ships and the wreckage of ancient certainties. 3 days after the battle at Harmony Point, Jake Morrison stood in his ready room aboard the Titan, reading reports that made his head spin. The entire galaxy was in chaos. Some species were trying to copy human fighting tactics. Others were forming alliances to defend against the human threat. A few were sending secret messages to Earth, asking if they could buy human weapons. The door chimed, and Dr. Martinez entered with a datapad full of intercepted communications. Her face looked tired and worried. Captain, you need to see this. The Saurid Empire has declared something called a blood war against humanity. According to my research, it's an ancient form of total warfare that they haven't used in over 2,000 years. Jake took the datapad and read the official declaration. The language was formal and full of ceremonial phrases, but the meaning was clear. The Saurids intended to gather the largest fleet in galactic history and destroy Earth as an example to any other species that might think about breaking the sacred protocols. How many ships are we talking about? Jake asked. Admiral Kethver is calling for every Saurid vessel to join the attack. Early reports suggest they're gathering over 300 warships. But that's not the worst part. Martinez pulled up another file. 6 other species have agreed to send ships to support them. They're calling it a crusade to restore galactic order. Jake set down the datapad and walked to the viewing port. The stars looked the same as they always had, but he knew that behind that peaceful appearance, hundreds of alien ships were preparing for war. How long before they reach Earth? 2 months, maybe 3. The Saurid fleet is massive, but it's also slow. They're taking time to coordinate with their allies and plan their attack. Martinez sat down heavily in one of the chairs. Captain, we started something we might not be able to finish. One ship against 300 is not good odds, even for U.S. The communication system beeped, and Lisa Brooks' voice came through from the bridge. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Admiral Rodriguez wants to speak with you immediately. Jake returned to the bridge and activated the long-range communication system. The face of Admiral Maria Rodriguez appeared on the main screen. She was the head of Earth's Space Forces and had been Jake's commanding officer for over 10 years. She looked older than he remembered, with new lines around her eyes. Jake, I've been reading your reports about what happened at Harmony Point. I have to ask you directly. Did you have any choice but to break their protocols? Jake thought carefully before answering. Admiral, they were trying to humiliate us in front of the entire galaxy. If we had followed their rules, humanity would have been marked as a weak species forever. We would never have been treated as equals. Admiral Rodriguez nodded slowly. That's what I thought. The politicians here on Earth are divided. Half of them think you did the right thing. The other half think you just started a war we can't win. What's your assessment of the situation? The Saurids are gathering a huge fleet to attack Earth. But Admiral, I think we can beat them. Their technology is centuries behind ours, and they still think in terms of the old rules. If we're smart about this, we can turn their numbers against them. Jake, I'm sending you reinforcements. Every ship we can spare is being loaded with our best weapons and most experienced crews. But it won't be enough to match their numbers. You're going to have to find another way to win this fight. The transmission ended, and Jake stared at the blank screen. Earth was counting on him again, but this time the stakes were much higher. If he failed, the aliens would not just defeat humanity. They would make an example of Earth that would terrify every other species in the galaxy. Amy Sullivan looked up from her weapons console. Captain, I've been thinking about what Admiral Rodriguez said. We can't match their numbers, but we don't have to. Human military doctrine has always been about using superior tactics to defeat larger forces. Pete Campbell's voice came through the speakers from engineering. Captain, I've been working on some modifications to our weapon systems. If we can get close enough to their fleet, I think we can do some real damage before they know what hit them. Jake was about to respond when the communication system activated again. This time, the caller was not from Earth. A face appeared on the screen that Jake had never seen before. It looked almost human, but the skin was blue and the eyes were solid black. Captain Morrison, I am Commander Yalesh of the Cerulean Republic. My people have been watching the events at Harmony Point with great interest. We would like to offer you an alliance. Jake was surprised. This was the first time any alien species had approached humanity as equals since the battle. What kind of alliance are you proposing, Commander? The sacred protocols have kept my people weak for too long. We have been forced to fight wars with weapons that are hundreds of years old because the consortium forbids us from developing better technology. Your actions have shown us that these restrictions can be broken. We want to learn from you. Dr. Martinez moved closer to Jake's command chair and whispered, Captain, the Ceruleans are known as excellent engineers but poor fighters. They might be useful allies. Jake made a decision that would change the course of the war. Commander, we're willing to discuss an alliance. But you should know that the Saurids are planning to attack Earth with the largest fleet in galactic history. Any species that allies with us will become their enemy too. Commander Yalesh smiled, showing teeth that were as blue as his skin. Captain, my people have been the Saurids' enemies for centuries. We just never had the weapons to fight back effectively. If you're willing to share your technology, we can provide you with ships and crews that learn quickly. Over the next few hours, Jake found himself in negotiations with not just the Ceruleans, but representatives from 4 other species. The insectoid Zephyrians offered their incredible coordination abilities. The crystalline resonance provided precision targeting technology that could improve human weapons. The furry Ursans brought heavy assault ships that were built like flying fortresses. Each species had been held back by the sacred protocols in different ways. Each had been waiting for someone to show them that the old rules could be broken. Humanity had given them that example, and now they wanted to join the revolution. Amy worked with alien engineers to integrate their technologies with human weapon systems. The results were impressive. Zephyrian coordination networks allowed multiple ships to fire as if they were a single massive weapon. Resonant targeting systems could hit enemy weak points with surgical precision. Ursan armor plating could protect human ships from weapons they had never faced before. But Jake knew that even with these new allies, they were still outnumbered. The Saurid fleet was massive, and it was being joined by ships from species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Numbers still mattered in space combat, no matter how advanced their technology became. The answer came from an unexpected source. Lisa Brooks was studying star charts when she noticed something interesting about the route the Saurid fleet was taking to Earth. "Captain, look at this. They're taking the most direct path through space, but that means they have to pass through the Nexus system." Jake looked at the charts. The Nexus system was a cluster of asteroids and space debris that surrounded a dying star. It was considered one of the most dangerous areas in the galaxy, which was why most ships avoided it completely. "Lisa, are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" She grinned. "Yes, sir. If we position our fleet in the Nexus system, we can force them to fight us in an environment where their numbers don't matter as much. The asteroids will break up their formations and make it impossible for them to coordinate their attacks." Amy's eyes lit up with understanding. "And our weapons are designed for rapid targeting of multiple small objects. We can use the asteroids as cover and as weapons. We could actually make the environment work for us instead of against us." Pete's voice came through the speakers with obvious excitement. "Captain, this could work. Our ships are smaller and more maneuverable than theirs. In an asteroid field, that's a huge advantage. Plus, our point defense systems can shoot down debris that might damage other ships." Jake studied the tactical possibilities. It was risky, but it was also exactly the kind of unconventional thinking that had won the battle at Harmony Point. The Saurids would be expecting a traditional fleet engagement in open space. Instead, they would find themselves in a chaotic environment where human adaptability would be more important than alien numbers. Dr. Martinez looked worried. "Captain, if this plan fails, there won't be anything between the Saurid fleet and Earth. You're betting the survival of our entire species on one battle." Jake looked around at his crew and thought about all the species that were now counting on humanity to lead them into a new age of galactic warfare. The old rules were broken, and someone had to write new ones. It might as well be humans. "Then we'd better not fail," he said simply. The Titan and its growing fleet of allies set course for the Nexus system, where the fate of the galaxy would be decided among the asteroids and wreckage of dead worlds. The Nexus system was a graveyard of ancient battles. Broken ships from wars fought thousands of years ago drifted between massive asteroids that tumbled slowly around a dying red star. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching his fleet take positions among the debris field that would soon become the most important battlefield in galactic history. 50 human ships had arrived from Earth, each one loaded with the most advanced weapons and shields that human engineers could build. They were joined by 40 Cerulean vessels with their incredible engineering systems, 30 Zephyrian ships that moved together like a single organism, 20 resonant craft that could target enemies with perfect precision, and 15 heavily armored Ursan battleships that looked like flying mountains. Admiral Kethver's Sored fleet was 3 times larger. Intelligence reports counted over 300 enemy ships approaching the system. They were supported by vessels from 6 other species, all united in their desire to crush the rebellion against the sacred protocols and restore the old order to the galaxy. Captain Lisa Brooks called from her navigation station. Enemy fleet will reach the outer edge of the asteroid field in 20 minutes. They're maintaining their formation perfectly, just like their protocols require. Jake nodded. The Saurids were approaching exactly as he had hoped they would. Their massive fleet was arranged in precise geometric patterns that had been used for centuries. Every ship knew its exact position and role. It was beautiful, organized, and completely wrong for fighting in an asteroid field. Amy Sullivan checked her weapons one last time. All human ships report ready, Captain. Our allies are in position and coordinating through the Zephyrian network. When this starts, we'll be able to act as one fleet instead of separate groups. The communication system activated, and Admiral Kethvor's face appeared on the main screen. His reptilian features were set in an expression of cold determination. Behind him, Jake could see the bridge of the massive Saurid flagship, filled with officers wearing traditional military uniforms covered in ancient medals and decorations. Captain Morrison, the Admiral said, his voice formal and threatening, you have violated the most sacred laws of civilized warfare. Today, the galaxy will watch as we restore order and punish those who would destroy our ancient traditions. Surrender now, and your death will be quick and honorable. Jake stepped forward so that his image would be transmitted clearly to every ship in the enemy fleet. Admiral, your sacred laws turned warfare into a game where the strongest always won by following old rules. Today, we're going to show the galaxy what happens when someone changes the rules completely. The Admiral's eyes flashed with anger. You are barbarians who understand nothing of honor or civilization. We will teach you the price of arrogance. He cut the transmission without waiting for a reply. Jake turned to his crew. These were the people who had stood with him when he made the decision to break the sacred protocols. Now they would stand with him as they faced the consequences of that choice. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth today. We're fighting for every species that has been held back by rules that stop them from defending themselves. Make every shot count. The first wave of Saurid ships entered the asteroid field in perfect formation. They advanced slowly and carefully, just as their protocols required. Their sensors swept the debris field, looking for human ships hiding. Among the ancient wreckage, they did not have to wait long. Amy opened fire first, her plasma cannons lancing out from behind a massive asteroid to strike the lead Saurid ship. The beam punched through their shields and disabled their main weapons before they could return fire. The attack was a signal for every ship in the human alliance. Suddenly, the asteroid field came alive with weapons fire. Cerulean ships appeared from impossible hiding places, their engineering systems having carved out perfect ambush positions in the solid rock. Zephyrian vessels swarmed around larger enemy ships like angry insects, their coordinated attacks overwhelming individual targets. Resonant craft fired with surgical precision, hitting critical systems that the Saurids had not even known were vulnerable. The Saurid formation began to break apart almost immediately. Ships that had been positioned to support each other found themselves separated by asteroids and debris. Captains who had trained for centuries to fight in open space suddenly had to navigate through a three-dimensional maze while under constant attack. Their formation is collapsing, Lisa reported, her voice filled with excitement. They can't maintain their positions in this environment. Some of their ships are actually colliding with asteroids because they're trying to follow flight patterns designed for empty space. Jake watched the tactical display as red symbols representing enemy ships began to flicker and disappear. The human alliance was not just winning individual battles. They were destroying the enemy's ability to fight as a coordinated force. But Admiral Kethver was not finished. His flagship and the core of his fleet broke through the outer asteroid field and began advancing toward the center of the system where the Titan waited. These were his best ships, commanded by his most experienced captains. They had abandoned their traditional formations and were adapting to the new environment. "Captain," Amy called out, "the Admiral's flagship is heading straight for us. It looks like he wants to settle this with single combat after all." Jake smiled grimly. "Then let's give him what he wants. All ships, focus fire on the Saurid flagship. Show them what happens when you challenge humanity to a real fight." The battle around the Admiral's ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The massive Saurid vessel fired its weapons in careful, measured bursts, trying to maintain the dignity of traditional combat even in the chaos of the asteroid field. The human ships attacked from every direction at once, using the debris field to appear and disappear like ghosts. Pete Campbell's voice came through the speakers from engineering. "Captain, their flagship is tough, but it's designed for fighting other ships that follow the same rules they do. It can't handle attacks coming from 6 different angles at the same time." The Admiral's ship was taking heavy damage, but it was also fighting back with desperate skill. Its weapons were ancient, but powerful, and its crew knew how to use them. Several human ships had already been forced to retreat with critical damage. Jake realized that this battle was about more than military victory. Every species in the galaxy was watching this fight. If the humans won by overwhelming the Saurids with superior numbers, it would just prove that they were bullies who could only win through brute force. But if they could defeat the enemy flagship in fair combat, it would prove that human tactics were truly superior to the old ways. "All ships except the Titan fall back to supporting positions," Jake ordered. "This is between me and the Admiral now." The space around the 2 flagships cleared as other vessels moved away. For a moment, it looked almost like the traditional single combat that had started this whole conflict. But Jake had no intention of following the old rules. The Titan moved through the asteroid field like a living thing, using its superior speed and maneuverability to stay ahead of the Saurid ship's heavy weapons. Amy fired constantly, hitting the enemy vessel from different angles and keeping their shields under constant pressure. Admiral Kethver tried to match Jake's tactics, but his ship was too large, and his crew was too used to fighting by the old rules. Every time they tried to adapt to human strategies, they left themselves open to attacks they had never imagined. The end came suddenly. The Saurid flagship's shields collapsed under a coordinated barrage from the Titan's weapons. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as critical systems failed. The great ship began to drift helplessly among the asteroids, its weapons silent and its engines dead. Jake opened a communication channel to the disabled vessel. "Admiral Kethver, your ship is defeated and your fleet is scattered. Do you surrender?" There was a long pause before the Admiral replied. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and filled with something that might have been respect. "Captain Morrison, you have shown me that the galaxy I knew is already dead. Your species has not just broken our laws. You have proven that our laws were wrong from the beginning." Jake felt no satisfaction in the victory. Too many beings had died today because they could not accept that the old ways were no longer enough. "Admiral, the galaxy doesn't have to choose between chaos and stagnation. We can write new rules that let every species defend itself while still maintaining peace." Over the following months, representatives from dozens of species gathered on Earth to create what became known as the Adaptive Accords. These new agreements replaced the sacred protocols with principles It emphasized flexibility over tradition, effectiveness over ceremony, and mutual respect over rigid hierarchy. Saurid Empire, humbled by their defeat, became one of the strongest supporters of the new system. Admiral Kethvar himself worked with human military advisors to develop combat doctrines that combined alien experience with human innovation. Jake Morrison found himself promoted to Fleet Admiral and placed in command of the first truly integrated Galactic Defense Force. Ships from dozens of species worked together,